somewhere in Ohio right now, in an office building nobody thinks about, in a city that doesn't make the evening news. 1,000 jobs are quietly disappearing, not because the factory shut down. Not because the company went bankrupt, not because some executive made a dramatic announcement on the steps of a courthouse. They are disappearing the way ice melts in a warm room, slowly, invisibly, until one day, there is nothing left. Her name. Let's call her Sarah. 2 years ago, she was considered exactly what the economy wanted. A college degree, a well-paying job at a financial services company in Columbus. She processed loan documents, analyzed reports, coordinated with departments. She was organized, fast, and good at her work. Then her company adopted a new AI system. Within 8 months, her entire department, 17 people, was gone. The job didn't get outsourced. It didn't move to another city. It moved into a server rack. Now, here's the part that should make you stop and think. Sarah's story isn't unusual anymore. What's unusual is that most people still think they're watching this happen to someone else, that it's a tech problem, a Silicon Valley problem, a problem for coders and junior developers. They're wrong. And there is now an actual number, a real, peer-reviewed, data-backed number that proves just how wrong that assumption is. In October 2025, a team of researchers at MIT published a study that quietly changed everything we thought we knew about AI and jobs. They called their measurement the Iceberg Index. And when you see what's sitting underneath that iceberg, who it threatens, which states it affects, which workers are sitting on a fault line they don't know exists, you will never look at your own job the same way again. This is the story of the greatest economic disruption in 100 years. And most of us, including the people paid to protect us from it, are looking in completely the wrong direction. Let's go back, because the story of automation is not new. It's just that the story has been told wrong for a long time. For most of the 20th century, automation was something you could see. You could walk into a factory in Detroit in 1985 and watch the robotic welding arm that used to be 5 men. You could see the conveyor belt that replaced 15 workers. The machines were loud. They were visible. They moved. And so when economists and politicians worried about automation, they worried about the factory floor. They worried about the blue-collar worker, the man in the hard hat, the woman on the assembly line. That worry was completely understandable and largely correct for its time. Between 1980 and 2010, more than 7 million manufacturing jobs disappeared from the United States. Cities like Detroit, Cleveland, Youngstown, places that had been economic powerhouses, began to hollow out. Unemployment spiked, schools struggled, and life expectancy, in some of these communities, actually fell. The transition was brutal, and it left a scar that is still visible today in cities that used to make things, in communities that used to believe in the promise of stable work. But even as those scars were forming, the consensus among economists was, eventually, this works out. New technology creates new industries. New industries create new jobs. It happened with the steam engine. It happened with electricity. It happened with computers. Every time machines took something away, human ingenuity built something new to replace it. And so as we entered the 2010s, and then the 2020s, there was a quiet, comfortable assumption built into most economic thinking. The next wave of automation, it was coming for the factory floor again. Better robots, more capable machines, physical automation. And the people who were safe, the people who could breathe easy, were the knowledge workers, the people who worked in offices, who worked with their minds, the accountants and the analysts and the lawyers and the HR professionals. After all, machines could weld a car door, but could they write a legal brief? Could they analyze a quarterly earnings report? Could they handle a complex customer service call? In November 2022, a company called OpenAI released a product called ChatGPT. And within roughly 48 hours, that comfortable assumption was dead. Almost overnight, the world learned something uncomfortable. The machines weren't coming for the factory floor. They were coming for the office. They could write the legal brief. They could analyze the report. They could handle the customer call in multiple languages, without a break, without health insurance, without ever asking for a raise. And what happened next was not a slow, predictable transition. What happened next was something far stranger and far more dangerous, because the disruption that followed didn't look like the Rust Belt. There were no shuttered buildings, no dramatic plant closings, no politicians making speeches. This time, the disruption was invisible. It looked like a hiring freeze. It looked like a software tool that increased efficiency. It looked like a team of 20 that suddenly, slowly, became a team of 12, then 8, then 4. It looked exactly like nothing, until you were the one who wasn't there anymore. And here's the question nobody was prepared for. If automation has always created more jobs than it destroyed, then why does this time feel different? What if this time it actually is? To understand what AI is doing to work, really understand it, you have to travel to a place that most people in the United States have never thought much about: the Philippines. Here's something most Americans don't know. For the last 30 years, the Philippines quietly became one of the most important economies in the world for one very specific thing: your customer service calls, your billing inquiries, your tech support requests, your insurance claims, your data entry, your transcription. All of it, or a massive portion of it, was handled by a workforce of nearly 2 million Filipinos in a business process outsourcing industry worth roughly $40 billion a year. That $40 billion represents nearly 10% of the Philippines' entire GDP. Think about that for a moment. 1 in every $10 the country produces comes from people sitting in office buildings in Manila, answering calls and processing documents for companies headquartered in America. For a generation of Filipinos, these jobs were not just employment. They were mobility, a path out of poverty, a way to support extended families, a way to send children to school. And by every economic metric, the strategy was working. The Philippines was growing. The middle class was expanding. The future was arriving. Then the future changed its mind. The IMF has estimated that up to 89% of outsourced service jobs in the Philippines are at high risk of being automated by AI tools that already exist today. Let me be specific about what that means. Not robots, not physical machines, not something in a laboratory. Large language models, the same technology powering the AI tools that millions of Americans are already using at their jobs, can now handle the work of a call center agent faster, more consistently, and at a fraction of the cost. These tools don't need health insurance. They don't need overtime pay. They don't need to be managed across time zones. They don't have bad days, and they are already being deployed. Roughly 2/3 of outsourcing companies operating in the Philippines are now using AI tools to cut costs and accelerate workflows. US companies, AT&T, Google, and others have outsourced massive volumes of work to Filipino workers for decades. That relationship is now under enormous strain. Now, to be fair, this is not yet a completed catastrophe. Many Filipino workers still have their jobs. Many are adapting. Some are genuinely finding that AI tools help them do their work faster. But the direction of the trend is unmistakable, because here's the cold economic logic that no amount of optimism changes. If an AI system can perform the same task as a human worker, at 1/10 the cost, with zero benefits, with no management overhead, there is no rational business reason to keep paying for the human worker. And the Philippines isn't alone. Bangladesh built its outsourcing sector to over 400 firms, employing more than 80,000 people. most of them doing customer service, transcription, and data entry. The same tasks, the same exposure. In India, the grandfather of the global outsourcing model, 6 million workers contribute roughly 7% of the country's GDP through IT and BPO services. 8 million people across these countries in industries worth over $200 billion per year, all built on the same fundamental assumption that there will always be humans on the other end who can do this work better, or at least cheaper than a machine. That assumption is collapsing. Now here's where the story takes its most uncomfortable turn, because this isn't just a story about the Philippines or Bangladesh. This isn't a story about developing economies that are far away and easy to feel distant from. This is a story about what happens next and who gets hit next. Because what AI is doing to call centers in Manila today, it is already beginning to do to offices in Columbus, Ohio, in Charlotte, North Carolina, in Salt Lake City, Utah. And the people in those offices, well-educated, well-paid, economically stable Americans, have no idea they are standing at the exact same intersection that those Filipino workers stood at a decade ago. In October 2025, a research team at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology published a study that reframed the entire conversation about AI and jobs. Not because it was the loudest, not because it was the most alarming, but because it asked a question that no one else had thought to ask. For 2 years, the media, the economists, the policymakers, everyone had been asking, which jobs will AI take? The MIT team asked something completely different. They asked, which tasks, inside jobs, can AI already technically perform? And that shift from jobs to tasks changed everything. Here is why the distinction matters. An accountant doesn't disappear overnight, but the hours they spend on routine data entry might quietly shrink to nothing. A lawyer doesn't get fired tomorrow, but the 12 hours a week they spent reviewing standard contracts? And AI does that now. The job still exists. The human still shows up, but the economic value they provide, the work only a human can do, that's quietly, steadily shrinking. And our entire economic measurement system, GDP, unemployment figures, wage data, was built to count jobs and people. It was never built to look inside a job and ask which parts of it a machine can already do, which means the disruption doesn't show up in the numbers until it's already well underway. The MIT team built something they called the Iceberg Index, and the name, it turns out, is exactly right. Here's how they built it. They started by creating a digital representation of 151 million American workers across 923 different occupations and 3,000 counties. They used a Department of Labor database called Own It, which breaks every occupation down into its actual component skills. Not just job titles, the actual tasks. Analyzing data, critical thinking, interacting with computers, programming, coordinating with others, hundreds of skill categories, each with an importance rating and a difficulty level. Then they did the same thing for AI, cataloging more than 13,000 real, production-ready AI tools currently being deployed inside companies right now. Coding assistants, document processors, financial analysis software, workflow automation tools, and they ran every single one of those tools through the same skill framework. Now, for the first time, you had two maps drawn in the same language. Human workers and AI systems, both described by the same taxonomy of skills. And where those maps overlapped, that's your iceberg index. So, what did they find? They started with the part everyone already knew. In the tech sector, the layoffs had been visible and dramatic. In 2025 alone, more than 100,000 job losses were directly linked to AI restructuring. AI is already writing more code every single day than every human developer on the planet combined. When the MIT team measured the wage value of tech sector work that AI can technically perform, That number came to about 2.2% of total US labor market wage value, roughly $211 billion. That is the tip of the iceberg. That's the number that has dominated every headline, every policy paper, every anxious conversation. But when the researchers applied the same methodology to the entire economy, the number jumped to 11.7%, roughly $1.2 trillion in wage value, 5 times larger. And here's what makes that number genuinely alarming: the extra 9.5%, the part beneath the surface. It doesn't belong to Silicon Valley. It belongs to HR coordinators, insurance claims processors, financial analysts, legal secretaries, administrative professionals, back office workers across every industry in America, people who have never appeared in a single headline about AI layoffs, people who went to college, got the right credentials, built careers in exactly the field society told them were safe. A separate study from Anthropic tracked actual AI usage in professional settings, the workers with the highest AI exposure, the ones whose skills overlap most significantly with AI capabilities, earn, on average, 47% more than the least exposed workers. They are 4 times as likely to hold a graduate degree, and they are 16 percentage points more likely to be female. Read that sentence again. The workers AI threatens most aren't the ones who struggled. They're the ones who did everything right, now. And this is crucial. The MIT researchers are careful to say something important. The Iceberg Index measures technical capability. It is not a job loss forecast. It does not predict when or whether companies will actually automate these roles. Think of it less like a weather forecast and more like an earthquake risk map. It tells you exactly which buildings are sitting on a fault line, not whether or when the tremor will hit. But here's the thing about fault lines. Knowing you're on one is useful, especially if the people responsible for your safety don't know you're on one. And right now, they don't. The MIT study found something equally disturbing to the iceberg exposure itself: traditional economic indicators, GDP, per capita income, unemployment rate. These explain less than 5% of the variation in iceberg index scores across American states, which means the tools governments are currently using to plan workforce policy, the instruments guiding billions of dollars in training investments and economic support. Those tools are essentially blind to the risk that actually matters, and it's creating a map of vulnerability that nobody expected. If you had to guess which states are sitting on the biggest AI fault lines, you'd say California, New York, Washington State, Silicon Valley, the tech hubs. You would be wrong. According to the Iceberg Index, South Dakota, North Carolina, Delaware, and Utah show higher exposure values than California. Ohio, the Rust Belt state that has spent decades preparing for robots on the factory floor, has an iceberg index of 11.8%. Tennessee is even more stark. Its tech sector exposure, 1.3%. Nothing that triggers any alarm bells in any standard workforce planning model. But its full iceberg index, 11.6%. The white-collar workforce keeping Tennessee's factories running, the financial analysts, the HR professionals, the administrative coordinators, is 10 times more exposed than the tech workers everyone has been watching. Ohio and Michigan follow the same pattern. These states have spent years and billions of dollars preparing for robots to come for the factory floor. But the white-collar disruption is arriving first, and nobody in charge of those states, nobody writing the policy, directing the training programs, allocating the workforce development funds, is looking in the right direction. While the iceberg was forming beneath the surface, something else was happening at the very top. In 2024 alone, more than 1,100 US-based AI companies raised major funding rounds. That is more than double all of Europe combined. Microsoft and IBM alone hold thousands of AI-related patents, giving them long-term control over the foundational infrastructure of the entire AI economy. The physical machines that power AI, the chips, the GPUs, the processing hardware. More than 90% of that hardware comes from just 5 countries: the United States, Taiwan, China, South Korea, and Japan. And according to PC's landmark analysis, AI is projected to add $15.7 trillion to the global economy by 2030. 70% of that wealth? 2 countries, the US and China, because they own AI. This is the economic reality that changes the conversation from "will AI hurt jobs" to something far more fundamental. In the past, new technologies mostly functioned as what economists call complementary capital. They made human workers more productive. A combine harvester didn't eliminate farm workers. One person could now do what 20 used to do. Labor and capital worked together. Productivity rose. Wages rose with it. Workers were still essential. For many high-skilled roles, AI will function this way. A financial analyst using AI to scan thousands of documents can focus more time on strategy. A doctor using AI for diagnostics can spend more time with patients. These workers become more valuable, not less, but for more routine work. For the administrative coordinator, the data processor, the document reviewer, AI is something different. Economists call it substitutive capital. It doesn't make you faster. It replaces you. An AI-powered chatbot doesn't make a customer support agent more efficient. It removes the need for the customer support agent. And capital has never been this concentrated. U.S. household wealth reached a record $181 trillion in late 2025. Much of that surge was driven by a 3-year AI-fueled boom in corporate equities. A boom that benefited, overwhelmingly, the wealthiest Americans who hold the most stocks. The data network effect means the biggest AI companies get bigger, faster, with every passing month. The more users they attract, the more data they generate. The more data they generate, the better their AI systems perform. The better their systems, the more users they attract. It's a feedback loop that concentrates power and wealth in a way that no previous technology quite managed to achieve this quickly. In 2024, 3/4 of the economic gains from AI were captured by just 20% of companies. The rest, thousands of smaller firms, entire sectors, the workers inside them, are either trying to keep up or being left behind. Wall Street banks, institutions that collectively employ hundreds of thousands of people, have already announced plans to eliminate approximately 200,000 jobs over the next 3 to 5 years. Specifically, entry-level roles, back-office functions. IBM replaced a portion of its HR department with AI tools and paused hiring. Salesforce stopped hiring engineers. Its CEO stated publicly that AI can do the work. Entry-level employment in AI-exposed occupations has already dropped 14% compared to the pre-ChatGPT era, and entry-level job postings across the US down 35% since January 2023. Among software developers aged 22 to 25, the people who did everything right, learned to code, got the degree. Employment has already fallen 20% from its 2022 peak. The entry-level tasks that used to be the way in, the apprenticeship to a career, are being handled by something else. And that creates a problem that doesn't show up in unemployment numbers. You can't lose a job you were never given. Here's a question that sounds like good news. What about the workers AI can't replace? According to Anthropic's research, roughly 30% of the US workforce has essentially zero AI exposure. Cooks, mechanics, plumbers, nurses, bartenders, childcare workers, home health aides, people doing physical, relational, hands-on work that no language model can replicate. Surely they're safe. Surely this is the good news in the story. Well, yes and no, because there's an economic pattern that's been quietly working against these workers for decades, long before anyone had heard of a large language model. And AI is about to make it significantly worse. In 1965, a Princeton economist named William Baumol noticed something strange about the performing arts. A string quartet performing Beethoven in the 19th century required 4 musicians and about 25 minutes. A string quartet performing the same piece a century later? Still 4 musicians. Still 25 minutes. Nothing about the performance had gotten more efficient. No technology had sped it up. And yet, the cost of putting on that concert had risen dramatically. Why? Because wages were rising everywhere else. As manufacturing and industry became dramatically more productive, as they could afford to pay their workers more, wages rose across the entire economy, and musicians had to be paid competitively, even though the output, 4 people, 25 minutes, never changed. Economists call this Baumol's cost disease. It explains why the things that got more productive, electronics, computers, manufacturing, got cheaper, and why the things that couldn't get more productive, healthcare, childcare, education, skilled trades, kept getting more expensive. AI is about to make this cost disease dramatically worse. If AI makes cognitive and administrative work 5-10 times more productive, a financial analyst doing an hour what used to take a day, then the relative cost of work AI can't automate keeps rising even faster. The nurse still needs the same time per patient. The plumber still needs to be physically there. The childcare worker cannot care for children remotely. Their output doesn't scale with AI. So the relative cost of their work keeps rising, pulled upward by a productivity surge happening everywhere around them. And these are essential services. People don't pull their kids out of school because tuition rose. They don't skip the plumber when the pipes burst. They don't go without a nurse when they're sick, which means the workers who are safest from AI disruption may find themselves in industries that governments, already stretched thin, will increasingly struggle to fund, safe from the machine, but trapped in an economy that can't afford them. So where does this leave us? Not in a place of certainty. Nobody, not the economists, not the technologists, not the policymakers, has a clean answer for what comes next. But we can see 3 possible roads ahead, and history gives us reason to think carefully about which one we're heading down. In the first scenario, AI becomes what economists hope it will be, the most powerful tool ever handed to human workers. In this future, the pattern of previous technological revolutions holds. Yes, some jobs are automated away, but new industries emerge. AI maintenance, AI training, AI ethics and oversight, human AI collaboration specialists, roles we haven't imagined yet. Workers who can leverage AI as a productivity multiplier become dramatically more valuable. The economy grows, wages rise across the board. Eventually, the transition is painful. Some workers get left behind, particularly those who can't access retraining, who live in regions without digital infrastructure, who entered the workforce at exactly the wrong moment. But the long-run arc bends toward prosperity. Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, the World Economic Forum, most major economic institutions project something in this neighborhood. Net job creation by 2030, productivity-driven growth, more jobs than were destroyed. This is the optimistic road. In the second scenario, the distribution problem wins. AI creates enormous wealth. The aggregate numbers look fine. GDP grows, productivity soars, corporate profits hit record highs. But the gains concentrate at the top with stunning efficiency. 3/4 of economic gains go to 20% of companies. Most of that 20% is owned by people who were already wealthy, the middle. The administrative professionals, the knowledge workers who made up the backbone of the American economy, finds its economic value steadily eroded. New jobs are created, but they tend to cluster at the extremes. Highly paid AI specialists at one end, lower paid human care roles, nursing, childcare, trades at the other. And the vast middle, the insurance adjusters and the HR coordinators and the financial analysts, They either adapt or they don't. This is not a hypothetical concern. The data already shows this pattern forming. Entry-level positions down 35%. Young workers in AI-exposed fields already experiencing significant employment declines. Wealth surging at the top, stagnating in the middle. The polarized economy isn't a worst case. The third scenario is the one that should concern us most, not because it's inevitable, but because it's the easiest to stumble into without realizing it. In this scenario, the disruption arrives faster than the institutions designed to manage it. Governments keep investing in workforce training programs aimed at factory automation, while the actual disruption is happening in office buildings. Policymakers use GDP and unemployment data to assess AI's impact, while the MIT researchers are demonstrating that those metrics explain less than 5% of actual exposure. Young workers spend 4 years getting degrees in fields that seemed safe and graduate into job markets where the entry-level positions that used to exist simply aren't there anymore. The iceberg doesn't sink the ship with a dramatic collision. It creates a slow leak, invisible for years, until one day, the water is already at your ankles. The missed transition isn't about malice, it's about instruments. You cannot navigate a new city with a 30-year-old map. And right now, that's what most institutions are using. Here is what the optimists get right. Every major technological disruption in history, from the steam engine to the internet, eventually created more value than it destroyed. More jobs, more productivity, higher living standards. That is not a fairy tale. It is a documented pattern stretching across centuries. And AI, if deployed well, if governed thoughtfully, if its benefits are distributed with even modest intentionality, AI could be the most powerful tool humanity has ever had for defeating poverty, improving healthcare, expanding education, and accelerating human potential. That future is genuinely possible. But here's what the optimists often get wrong. Eventually is a long time to go hungry. The Industrial Revolution eventually produced a prosperous middle class. But in between the invention of the steam engine and that prosperity, there was the grinding misery of early factory labor. There was child labor. There were decades of brutal inequality before the institutions. Unions, labor laws, public education, social safety nets caught up to the technology. The transitions that went best were the ones where society could see what was coming clearly enough and early enough to prepare. And right now, the gap between what is technically happening and what our institutions can see is enormous. The MIT Iceberg Index is a beginning, not a solution, a better map. It reveals the fault lines where our institutions are blind. It shows that the threat is not concentrated in Silicon Valley. It's distributed across every state, every city, every office building where someone spends their day reading, writing, analyzing, and summarizing. It shows that the workers at greatest risk are not the ones who failed. They're the ones who did everything right. And it shows that the tools we're using to protect people from this disruption, GDP figures, unemployment rates, sector-by-sector job counts, those tools simply cannot see the problem they're supposed to solve. Nobody can predict exactly how this plays out. Not the economists, not the technologists, not the policymakers. But here's what we know. The iceberg is there. The question is whether we're going to keep pretending we can't see it, or whether we're finally going to build instruments capable of measuring what's actually at stake. Because the cost of getting this wrong isn't just a number in a quarterly report. It's the people sitting in those offices right now who went to school, worked hard, played by the rules, and deserve a better map than the one we've been using. The economy is changing. The only question that has ever mattered in a moment like this is, are we changing fast enough to meet it? If this changed how you see your job, your city, or your future, you already know there's more to this story. Every week, we cover the economic forces most people don't see coming. Hit subscribe. turn on notifications. The next video might be the one that matters most to you.